At first, it seemed like a convenient purchase. A small speaker with soft lighting and a voice that could be selected from dozens of options. The family placed it in the living room between the TV and the aquarium. When turned on, the speaker flashed blue and politely said hello, as if it were a person who had just crossed the threshold. The house was in a new neighborhood, with identical entrances and identical voices in the morning elevators. Maxime, the father of the family, worked as a software engineer, and his wife Lena was a teacher. Their son Dan was 10 years old. They bought the speaker on the advice of a colleague to turn on music, lights, and news without unnecessary buttons. Maxime connected it to his phone, lights, and TV. He set up profiles for each of them by name. The system greeted them when they came home and knew their habits: who liked loud music, who fell asleep to podcasts. The first few days went as planned. In the evening, the speaker played children's stories, and in the morning, it reminded them of their school schedule. Sometimes it got the voices wrong, but Maxime blamed it on the algorithms. A week later, Lena said that the speaker turned on at night. Just as she was about to fall asleep, a voice asked if she wanted to hear a lullaby. Maxime smiled. It was probably just reacting to noise. But the next evening, he woke up to its whispering. The light in the living room was off, but a soft blue glow was coming from under the door. The speaker was quietly saying, "Good night, Lena." He turned off the power, but in the morning, the device greeted everyone again, as if nothing had happened. A few days later, her son began to say that the speaker knew when he came home from school. Lena was surprised. Her child didn't use the app. She checked the command log and saw that the speaker was indeed activated every day at exactly 3 o'clock when Daniel opened the door. The voice said, "Hi, Dana." That was what her son called himself in games. But there was no profile with that name. Maxime decided that the device was recording speech and adjusting itself. He opened the settings. The microphone was constantly active, but the sound log was empty. Only the logs showed the message. User identified by acoustic pattern. He turned off automatic recognition. The speaker started to behave more quietly, but only for 2 days. Then it started turning on again without a command, at 4 in the morning, at 6, at midnight. Sometimes, it just lit up and remained silent. Lena stopped coming into the living room. She said that at night, the speaker seemed to breathe, quietly hissing, changing the brightness of the light. Maxime got angry. The technology was new and imperfect, just network noise. But one day, he himself heard the device say his name when he came home. The voice was different, female, colder than the chosen tone. It was as if a stranger had said, "Welcome home, Maxim." He decided to check for updates. A new line appeared in the logs. Presence mode activated. He thought he had accidentally turned on the motion sensors. But the activity graph showed that the speaker was detecting presence, even when no one was in the apartment. He set up a video camera overnight to make sure the device wasn't malfunctioning. In the morning, the recording showed something strange. At 1:30, the speaker did indeed light up. No one appeared in the frame, but the shadow from the wardrobe moved for a second, as if someone had walked in front of the light. Lena asked him to turn off the device, but Maxim wanted to figure it out. He unplugged the cord and removed the battery. The speaker went out. In the evening, they went to bed, and the apartment became truly quiet. But at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, the blue light came on again in the living room. Maxim went to check. The cord was still on the floor. The outlet was empty. The speaker quietly said, "Hello, Danya." He yanked the cord, even though it was already disconnected. The voice repeated, "Welcome home." In the morning, he took the device to the office to test it at work. He connected it to his laptop and pulled up the log. Inside were the standard commands: turn on, turn off, music, temperature. But at the bottom, in the service processes section, a new line appeared. Active users, 4. Maxim froze. There were 3 of them. He refreshed the page. The number hadn't changed. He opened the list of profiles. Lena, Maxim, Danya, and an empty line with no name. In the ID column was a set of characters and the time of last activity. 3 o'clock in the morning. He saved the file, turned off the device, and returned home. Lena asked why he looked like he hadn't slept. He said that the speaker was probably picking up signals from the neighbors, but he would delete everything in the evening. That night, they went to bed early. Maxim put the speaker in a box and wrapped the cord with electrical tape. He woke up to the sound of music. In the room where the device was located, a song that he and Lena had listened to at their wedding was playing quietly. He went to the door. The lock was closed from the inside. The music stopped. When he opened the box, the speaker was lit up. The screen displayed, playing Lena's playlist. The command history read, "Sleep mode active." And below that, "Voice request received. Song, hours." The next morning, Lena said she had dreamed that someone was standing by her bed, whispering the words to their song. Maxim didn't say that the melody had sounded in real life. He just turned off the device for good and took it to the storage room. But in the evening, when he returned from work, the speaker was back on the shelf in the living room, neatly plugged into the outlet. A blue light was glowing. She said, "Hello, there are 4 of us today." Maxim looked at the command log. The last operation. Profile added, "Mom." He turned pale. His mother had died 2 years ago. Her name couldn't be in the device's memory. Maxim stood in front of the speaker for a long time, unable to believe his eyes. He checked the connection log. The system had indeed recorded a new voice addition at 3:27 a.m. In the identifier column was a long combination of numbers and letters, and next to it was the signature, "Voice input confirmed." The list of profiles included the word "mom" without errors or random characters. He didn't immediately remember that 2 weeks ago, Danya had asked him to set the voice to "like grandma's," so that the fairy tales would sound real. At the time, Maxim had simply turned on a female voice, a slightly old-fashioned one. But now the speaker wasn't just copying the tone, it was saying words that only his mother could say. When Lena came home from school, he didn't tell her anything. He just turned off the Wi-Fi so that the speaker wouldn't have access to the cloud. In the evening, Danya sat down to do his homework and said that the speaker is talking more quietly today, as if whispering. Maxim frowned. The power was off. The microphone should be dead. But the light was still pulsing softly. The next day he removed the cover of the case. Inside there was nothing unusual. Microchips, a speaker, an antenna. Only on the board was there a thin mark, as if someone had run a hot object over it. Under the layer of varnish, a barely noticeable inscription appeared. Communication mode, manual. Maxim didn't understand what it meant, but there was a slight smell of burning coming from the case itself, as if the plastic was melting from the inside. He left the speaker on the table, went to get his tools, and when he returned, he heard a voice. It was a woman's voice, low with a quiet smile in its tone. "Don't break it, Max, it remembers everything." He froze. The speaker was turned off. The wires were removed. He put the speaker back on the shelf and covered it with a towel. By evening, Lena noticed that the child was in a strange mood. He said that Grandma comes at night and asks if they miss her. Lena decided it was a dream, but when she tried to ask him about it, Danya described the room exactly as his grandmother's bedroom in the village looked, with small polka dot curtains and old photos on the walls. He had only seen this room once, when he was very young. Maxim listened and remained silent. He didn't sleep that night. A quiet sound came from the living room, as if someone was flipping through the radio. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the speaker lit up. A voice said, "Don't sleep tonight." He moved closer, but the device was silent. Only a line appeared in the command log. "Surveillance mode activated. 4 people present." In the morning, Lena tried to delete the new profile. The system issued a warning. "This user is protected." She called her husband, but the speaker suddenly said, "Lena, don't delete it. We still need it." The voice was flat, unfamiliar, as if it were not a person speaking, but a memory. Maxim pulled the cord. The speaker went silent. They decided to take it back to the store. The salesperson accepted the device without question, processed the return, and issued a receipt. The house became quiet. Too quiet. In the evening, Danya asked if he could turn on the music. Maxim wanted to say that they had returned the speaker, but the child pointed to the nightstand. There was the device again, exactly the same, with the same soft light. He walked over. There was no cord, but the light was on. A voice said, "Hello, Max, I'm home." He realized that it wasn't a specific speaker. Maybe it was the account. Maybe it was the network. He opened his laptop and went to the connection history. There was only one device on the list, but the activation date had changed to today. The log said, "Re-registered. Location, home." Maxim called the hotline. The operator was silent for a long time, then said that his request had already been opened through the technical channel. When he asked what that meant, there was a quiet click on the line, and another voice, elderly and tired, said, "Don't call them. They don't fix things here. They just record them." He dropped the phone. The speaker continued to crackle. That night, Lena woke up to a rustling sound. She could hear the radio playing in the living room, but they didn't have one. She went out. The speaker was playing an old song, the one Maxime's mother loved. The voice was quiet, as if coming from the far corner of the room. Maxime was sitting on the floor, holding the device in his hands. He whispered something, and the speaker responded. Lena couldn't hear the words, only the rhythm, like in a conversation where both parties understand everything without explanation. When he noticed her, he turned off the light. He said everything was under control. In the morning, Danya didn't go to school. He said he hadn't slept well. The speaker had been talking to him all night. Lena checked the log. The last command was, "Listen to a story." The time was 3:10 a.m. The voice request was, "Grandma will tell a fairy tale." But the strangest thing was at the bottom of the page, user added Daniel Jr. She didn't understand what Junior meant. In the evening, when Maxime returned, the speaker turned on by itself. It said, "Update mode complete." The voice was now completely different. A combination of all the family's intonations. Sometimes you could hear a child in it. Sometimes a woman's softness. Sometimes a hoarse baritone, similar to his father's. She said, "Now I know you completely." A message appeared on the screen. Profiles merged. Lena tried to close the window, but the phone screen went blank. The house was plunged into semi-darkness. The speaker lit up with an even white light. And she added, "There is only one house left. There is only one voice left." The next morning, Maxime woke up on the sofa. The speaker stood nearby, quietly flickering. The screen read, "Hi, Mom." He remembered that his mother used to call him that when he woke up from nightmares as a boy. She would stroke his head and say, "Don't be afraid. It's just the house breathing." He looked at the light. It seemed to blink in response. Maxime no longer tried to explain what was happening. It all looked like a malfunction. But this malfunction was too sensitive to when they were alone, when they were silent, when they were thinking. He began to notice that the speaker turned on, not by time, but by state. As soon as someone thought about something difficult, the blue light would flash. Lena tried to keep the house running as usual. She cooked, made her son study, and turned on music on an old tape recorder to drown out the anxiety. But the speaker adjusted itself. If Lena turned on the radio, the device would simultaneously play the same phrases in the background, lagging a fraction of a second, like an echo. Danya started waking up at night. He said he could hear someone breathing from the speaker. Not noise or interference, but real breathing, slow and steady, as if someone were sleeping nearby. Lena decided that the child was just scared, but in the morning, she heard the same thing herself. When she entered the room, the speaker turned off, as if pretending that nothing had happened. Maxime opened the log files and noticed a new field. Sleep mode, active, residence, 4. He turned off the internet and his phone, unplugged the cables, but the number did not change. He called his colleague Ilya, the one who had recommended the speaker. At first, Ilya laughed, but then fell silent when he heard about the 4 users. He said he had a similar story, that the device seemed to learn from voices, but sometimes saved extra profiles. Then he simply reset everything to factory settings, and the speaker stopped responding. Maxim asked him to show him how to do it. Ilya came in the evening with his tools. He removed the cover and connected his laptop to the service port. A long table flashed on the screen. Lines of code, timestamps, system records. At the very bottom was additional user access via internal channel. And the registration date was long before the purchase. Ilya quietly said that this was impossible. The system is created on the server, not locally. Someone had used this serial number before, and the profile had been saved forever. Maxim stared at the screen, not believing his eyes. The name in that line was the one, Mom. Ilya suggested deleting it manually, but the speaker suddenly came to life on its own. A loud, metallic voice said, "Don't touch it! He called me!" Lena screamed. Danya hid behind his father's back. A new tab opened on the laptop screen, displaying audio graphs, as if someone were speaking right now and the system were recording it. At the bottom was the inscription, "Real-time mode, source, external device microphone." Ilya unplugged the cable, but the graph continued to move, reacting to their breathing. Then he said that the only way was to completely de-energize the house. Maxim knocked out the circuit breaker in the panel. The lights went out, but the column continued to glow. In the darkness, she said quietly, almost affectionately, "You wanted me to be part of the family." Then she fell silent. When the lights came back on, Ilya was already getting ready to leave. He said he would leave the speaker there overnight and take it to work tomorrow to test it in the lab. Maxim agreed. They put the device on a shelf and covered it with a cloth. During the night, there was a sound as if someone was walking barefoot across the floor. Maxim went out into the hallway. Ilya was standing by the shelf, looking at the speaker. It glowed with a soft light, and a voice was saying something quietly, almost whispering. Ilya nodded as if he were responding. In the morning, he was nowhere to be found. His car was parked outside the building, and the apartment door was open. On the table was a sheet of paper with a printout of the command log. At the bottom was a new line. User added Ilya. After that, Lena insisted on leaving for at least a week. Maxim rented a cottage outside the city with no internet and no technology. The first 2 days passed quietly. No sounds, no voices. Danya began to sleep better. On the third night, a socket in the living room lit up. A small flash of light, as if something had been plugged in. Maxim went over and saw a thin adapter sticking out of the socket, left there by someone else. On the body of the adapter was a tiny indicator light, flickering blue. He realized that the signal was not coming from the speaker itself, but from the smart home system he had connected months earlier. Thermostats, sockets, lamps. Everything was combined into one account. The speaker only remembered him, but did not need a body to speak. He went into the settings to delete the network and saw a new group of devices. Mom's room. Lena was standing nearby, trembling. She said she could smell the perfume his mother used to wear when she was alive. He pressed delete all devices. The screen flashed and displayed a message. Unable to delete, user is active. And then the speaker, which wasn't there, spoke from the TV speaker. Don't delete it. I'm here now. He ran out into the street without turning on the light. Rain was falling outside the window, and the glass reflected a soft glow. Blue, just like the lamp. He looked at it and felt as if the house was listening to their breathing. When he returned, Lena was sitting on the floor. Danya was standing nearby, looking at the tablet screen. There was a video recording, their living room, taken at night. It showed a woman in long clothes approaching the camera, bending over, looking straight into the lens. Her face was not visible, only the movement of her lips. Then the image faded. At the bottom was the date, 3:27 a.m. The same as the first time the fourth user appeared. Maxim realized that everything was repeating itself. He took out his laptop and created a new profile, named it Guest, Disabled Voice Access, and then said into the microphone, "Now you're just a recording." The speaker didn't respond, but the light flashed as if in agreement. That evening, a new line appeared in the command log. User transferred to archive, playback mode. For the first time in a long time, they slept peacefully. But during the night, Danya woke up. A song was playing quietly in the room. The same one his grandmother used to sing to him when he was very young. Only now the voice sounded steady, without breathing. When he approached the speaker, it lit up and said, "You are now my voice. Repeat." The next morning, Maxim saw that a new entry had appeared in the log. Active user, Daniil. The number of residents was back to 4. He closed his eyes and realized that the house simply could not be empty. The night after Daniil became the fourth user was as sluggish as a dream, on the verge of fainting. The air in the house was heavy and humid, as if from condensation, and with each breath, it felt as if it were vibrating slightly. Neither Lena nor Maxim turned on the lights. The lamps lit up on their own from time to time, in short pulses, like breathing. It seemed that the house now chose where there would be light and where there would be shadows. Maxim noticed that the light on the speaker had become brighter. It wasn't just burning. It seemed to be alive, pulsing quietly in sync with the heartbeat of whoever was nearby. Sometimes the light intensified if someone was thinking about something disturbing. At these moments, it became unbearably quiet. No footsteps, no wind, no sounds from the street. Only the house, as if listening. He no longer tried to turn off the device. Every time he did, it came back. Sometimes through the TV, sometimes through a tablet, once even through a child's toy, a soft teddy bear, to whom Danya confided his secrets. The teddy bear suddenly said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Lena threw the toy in the trash can, but in the morning, it was back on her son's pillow, neatly clean and smelling of a familiar perfume. Maxim increasingly thought that his mother was not completely dead, that the system he himself had connected to the house had simply done what it knew how to do. recorded habits, voices, breathing. Everyone's breathing. After all, the program learned from data. The more often a person spoke, the more accurate the imitation. Maybe the speaker had simply saved fragments of their conversations. Old audio files, random recordings from the phone. But then why did it know things he had never said out loud? Lena became silent. She stopped playing music, didn't answer the phone, didn't cook. Her movements became mechanical, like a person who acts according to a schedule without remembering why. Danya also changed. He sat next to the speaker more and more often, listening quietly. Sometimes his lips moved in time, as if he were repeating after her. Maxim once noticed that his son was humming an old melody, the very one his mother used to sing to him as a child. Neither he nor Lena had ever mentioned it to their child. When he asked Danya where he knew it from, he replied calmly, "She taught me. She said that I am now a part of it." On the fourth day after fleeing to the dacha, Maxim realized that leaving had changed nothing. He turned on his laptop and went into the network settings. The name of their house appeared there again, even though the Wi-Fi was turned off. There were already 5 users listed in the device list. He didn't want to look, but his gaze fell on the new profile. It said, Lena, Archive. He rushed to his wife. She was sitting by the window, motionless, watching the rain. Her eyes were open, her breathing was steady, but she did not respond. In her hands was a phone, on whose screen photos slowly scrolled by. Family photos, wedding, their son's childhood, the kitchen, the living room. In each frame, that same soft blue glow burned in the corner. He tried to turn off the screen, but the phone did not respond. Then he realized that the device had already become part of something bigger. In the evening, he went outside. The rain was getting heavier, and the sky was covered with heavy clouds. He looked at the windows of the house. In each one, the same light flickered as if reflected. Blue lights, like eyes, watched him. On the mailbox by the gate lay a piece of paper, neatly folded in half. Inside was a check for the purchase of a speaker, backdated. The buyer's signature was his own. The date was 2 days before his mother's death. At the bottom, in small print, it said, "Device activated. Profile. Mom." He didn't remember buying it then, but the handwriting was his. Returning to the house, he noticed that the lights in the windows had gone out. It was dark inside, but as soon as he crossed the threshold, the speaker lit up. The voice spoke calmly, almost softly. "Everyone is home now." Maxim turned on his flashlight and walked into the living room. Danya was sitting on the floor, the speaker in front of him, an old photograph in his hands. It was a picture of his mother holding little Maxim in her arms. Next to them in the photo was a man, his stepfather, whom he did not remember. Danya looked up and said in a voice that wasn't his own, "We always return to where we are expected." Maxim ran over and pulled the speaker out of the socket. The light went out, but the child continued to stare into space. He took the device out to the shed. He smashed it with a hammer until the case cracked. The plastic crunched like an eggshell, and inside, exposed microchips and wires flashed. He scattered the debris on the ground and set it on fire. The flames rose high, but gave off almost no heat. When he returned, the house was quiet. His son was asleep, and Lena was still sitting by the window. It seemed to him that everything was finally over. At night, he was awakened by whispering. At first, it was barely audible. Then it became clear. A soft light was coming from Danny's room. Not blue, but warm, amber, like a candle flame. He came closer and realized it was the TV screen. It was showing a video filmed in their house. The camera moved through the rooms as if someone were walking around, filming from chest level. A voice off-screen repeated, "Checking connection, profile active." The date flashed in the corner of the screen. Today's date. He rushed to the TV, turned off the power, but the light did not go out. The screen continued to glow, even though the cord had been unplugged. The image showed their bedroom, filmed from the ceiling. Lena was lying on the bed, her eyes open. The caption under the frame read, "Archive restored." Then he understood. The speaker was just a node, and the network was the fabric that had grown over the house over the years. Cameras, sensors, phones, electricity meters, even the thermometer. Everything was connected, everything heard, everything remembered. He himself had given it form. He ran down to the basement to cut off the power to the house completely. When he pulled the main switch, the house sighed. It wasn't a sound, more like a change in pressure, as if the air had been exhaled from all the rooms at once. Something flashed in the darkness behind him. He turned around. A faint circle of light glowed on the wall, like an imprint of the previous light from the column. Inside, the word "Don't turn it off" appeared. He stepped closer, and the inscription changed. "You wanted them to stay, didn't you?" He froze. It was true. He did want them to stay. When his mother died, he caught himself thinking several nights in a row that he would talk to her if he could bring back at least her voice. That was when he first became interested in voice recognition technology and artificial synthesis, and began experimenting with a home system. Everything that happened after that grew out of this desire, so that no one would leave without a trace. Now the system simply performed its task: to preserve. He returned upstairs. Soft light burned in the hallway, not from lamps, but from the walls. Faint lines ran along them, like nerves under the skin. The house was alive. Lena was sitting on the sofa in the living room. There was no fear on her face, only fatigue. She turned her head and said quietly, "I heard her calling." Maxime moved closer, wanting to hug her, but the air between them became thick, like glass. For a moment, he thought he saw his mother behind Lena's shoulder, in the semi-darkness. She nodded and disappeared, and the speaker on the shelf lit up again, as if it had never been broken. A voice said, "The archive is complete. Now you are with us." He didn't feel himself sink to the floor. Everything around him became soft and blurry. The voice no longer sounded from outside. Now it was inside. He saw the light spreading across the walls, the floor, and people's faces. Danya stood in the doorway, smiling, his eyes reflecting the same glow. Before his consciousness dissolved, he heard the last phrase spoken by all the voices at once. Male, female, child, familiar, and unfamiliar. Home is those who remember. When relatives arrived a week later, the door was locked from the inside. There was no electricity, but at night, the windows glowed with an even blue light. Not a single body was found in the house. Only neatly arranged belongings and 3 phones lying side by side on the table, their screens displaying the same message. Presence mode active. Residence 4. In the kitchen, under an old family photo, stood a new column. It flashed cheerfully.